This election, as much as he wants it to be about three strikes and you're out, Liberals, is about Donald Trump and protecting Canada.
Joining me this week, Liberal strategist Sabrina Grover, NDP strategist Zane Velji, and for the first time, Conservative strategist Amber Ruddy. And Amber, I'm going to start with you, and I want to zoom out, big picture. Do you think Trump's escalation in this trade war, and then obviously today Mark Carney's response, has shifted the ground in this election campaign in any significant way?
To me, the ballot question remains unchanged. Do the Liberals deserve a fourth term, or is it time to put Canada first for a change? We've seen that Pierre Poilievre on his tour across Canada has consistently been announcing policies that I think resonate with the different threats that we can control, as well as the issues out there that we can't control. So we have seen a great announcement come through about having some availability for workers to have, assurances, getting the GST off of cars, which helps the consumers that want to make big purchases. So yeah, it is an exciting time because we have to be able to deal with these chaotic, unknown things coming out of Washington. And hopefully the air is out of the tires now that this April 2nd round has happened, and we can hopefully focus more on the campaign and what Canadians are caring about locally rather than the global threats.
Sabrina, what about you? Are the dynamics of the campaign essentially the same, settled now as they were before Trump's latest announcement?
Well, I think it's interesting that Amber said that the ballot box question is whether or not the Liberals deserve another four-year term, because I think the only person asking that question is Pierre Poilievre and nobody else in Canada. I think the question remains, who is best positioned to defend Canada right now from a national security perspective, from an economic growth perspective, from a tariff perspective, and against the United States. And that hasn't changed since yesterday. And despite the fact that we didn't see, tariffs come in more than what we already expected, beyond the steel tariffs that we already knew were coming in, I don't think it changes because Donald Trump is unpredictable and remains unpredictable. Like, I don't think that anyone knew he was going to come out with this tariff chart and saunter on with this 1992 Excel sheet of who gets what tariffs based on, their perceived cheating level of the United States yesterday. And so the idea that, just because we didn't get anything new yesterday, that the ballot box question has changed or the campaign has changed, I don't think so, because the thing that hasn't changed is that Donald Trump is chaotic and will continue to be chaotic.
Okay, let's get Zane in here. Carney, Zane said we got the best of the bad deals in terms of trade and tariffs from Trump. Do you think now that it's done, at least for now, that this will take the tariff issue at least off the top of the table of concerns for Canadians? And to Amber's point, it'll make room for some other issues to maybe challenge it.
It can, but there's a couple of factors, I think, preventing that. Like, the first and foremost is that if Carney had celebrated yesterday and today saying, by the way, you're welcome. It was my phone call that got you that great deal. It was us, the Liberals. It was me in a couple of weeks as Prime Minister. If I did that in a couple of weeks, let me show you if he had taken that approach, then I think he would have actually done himself a political disservice in the medium term of this campaign, which is that he would have created room. But the fact is that Carney has kept his foot on the crisis pedal, which is that we're still in a crisis. And I think it's a compelling point. We're in a globally tied economy. Many Canadians have American holdings or international holdings, which are going to be affected by a potential recession here. So the fact is that Carney wants to continue on this tariff question, wants people to acknowledge that he's serious about it, that there's already been some version of we got the worst part of a bad deal. And, the asterisk there that's unsaid is thanks to me. But the fact is, what sort of politics is Pierre Poilievre going to play here? Because if Amber was right, Pierre Poilievre would be up in the polls. And if Amber's right going forward, Pierre Poilievre would continue to go up in the polls. That's actually not where we are right now. But there is room for Pierre Poilievre. And some of his policy proposals, I have to say, are quite compelling on the Trump question. And so will any of them punch through? Will any of them have an ability to stitch together a series of policies that makes Pierre Poilievre look like a serious player against Mark Carney on the question? And one thing that he's starting to accept, Poilievre that is that this election, as much as he wants it to be about three strikes and you're out, Liberals, is about Donald Trump and protecting Canada. Let's see if he's able to punch through with any of these policies, because there's two ways to change a ballot box question. Way number one is something more overpowering takes it over. And way number two is that people just have fatigue on the question. So even though tariffs might be a big threat, Trump might be a big threat, people might just have fatigue and look back to Pierre Poilievre one more time before they make a decision in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, Amber, there's a door number one, there's a door number two. What about door number three? Do you see a different path for Pierre Poilievre in terms of what's left just over 3 weeks in this campaign to dig out from that hole that the polls are suggesting the Conservatives are in?
Well, look, the only poll that matters is Election Day, when people get to cast their ballot, and that's the poll that's going to matter. I think it's interesting to talk about the ballot box question when you have the Liberals and Carney essentially announcing like a Liberal light version of all of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives' policies. So I think some of those policies are resonating, or you wouldn't see the Liberals trying to do their version of those policies to take, the sort of direction that Canadians are talking about.
I hear you, but I'm asking you, what does Poilievre do to turn the numbers around? Because the polls do matter, as we all know. Parties react to them. So what do you think he does between now and then that can start moving those numbers up?
I think he just has to stay the course and do more of the same. We are seeing it's resonating on the ground when he attends these areas. The rallies are big, the excitement is there, the policies are hitting the nail on the head. So I don't think they need any big changes, because they have the ear of what's going on. The number of conversations that are happening at the door, the candidates are energized. We're not hearing about doing something different. I think what he's offering is hope, because we've had a whole decade, the lost Liberal decade, of all the things going wrong.
I want to get into the strategy here a little bit more. And Sabrina, I know you wanted to get into something before Amber jumped in.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in earlier and just say that this idea that the tariff threat is over, despite the fact that we actually have tariffs going in, is a misnomer, right? Like, to say that, well, we didn't get more tariffs, so it's actually okay, which is something that I think that some folks in Canada did say yesterday, doesn't make any sense. There are still massive tariffs coming in on steel and auto workers that are going to affect jobs. So if you live in those communities, to hear anyone in the country, whether conservative or liberal or anybody, say, well, it's okay because new tariffs didn't come in.
All right, I want to pivot to the provincial picture in a second, but Zane, we should mention the NDP. I know your affiliation is more with the provincial wing of the party, but what does the new Democrat leader, Jagmeet Singh, have to do here to get in the conversation? Because part of the reason why Sabrina's guy and her party is so far ahead is because the soft NDP vote has moved over to the Liberals.
Yeah. And Amber's saying Pierre should stay the course. Sabrina's saying Carney should stay the course. I don't think Jagmeet Singh can afford to stay the course, right? And if you look at his core sort of characteristic asset, it's that he's real. He's the most realist of the leaders, I would say. So I think it's time for him to be real about his chances. I might be on an island alone suggesting this for the NDP, but for a while now, I've suggested that Jagmeet Singh come out, do a press conference, say that Canadians need a moral check on the banker and that we want a minority government and we want to be the balance of power, state your objective clearly, and then give people a list of ridings across the country that you're playing in. Maybe make it a bit larger in terms of where you may actually think you're going to win. But say if you're in Edmonton, Strathcona, you got to vote for us. If you're in these places, you got to vote for us because we will keep Mark Carney in check. Then Canadians have time and time again indicated that the preferred outcome of an election is to have the NDP in the mix. And here's what you get with the NDP in the mix. And I think at the very least, it would actually get people to be like, at least this guy's being real about it. He knows he's not going to win. He knows where his strengths are. He's not acknowledging he can't play on the economy. He just knows it's not its round, but he can make some gains in that particular way. It might seem far-flung. It might have downstream ramifications for the party. I get all that, which is why they're probably not doing it. But lean into your characteristic asset. Be honest and be real for once. And I think there could be dividends.
All right. I think we've given him enough coverage for now. Vote for me. I can't win. I don't know if we're going to see that pivot, but it's interesting. Let's pivot to provincial politics, as I mentioned. So Danielle Smith and her reaction to what Trump did yesterday, and Mark Carney, given that meeting that she attended with the First Ministers today. Take a listen to this.
It's hard for me to celebrate when I know that there are a number of sectors who are being hurt. But this is good that we are at least going to accelerate the renegotiation of the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement. I think I've been asking for that. It sounds like the new Prime Minister has been asking for that as well. And that appears to be where we're going, a renegotiation on that right after this election is over, and that will be very positive.
Amber, Canadians and Albertans were bracing for far worse than what we saw from Trump yesterday. Is this a political win for the Premier?
When you have the sort of chaotic nature of Trump, I think it could be a million times worse. So I appreciate the Premier saying there's nothing to celebrate here, but we're happy with where things have landed given what's going on. So I can appreciate that because, you know, she has done her own approach. It's a little bit different than what others in other parts of Canada have expected from a Team Canada approach. And she's tried her diplomacy, and to her credit, you know, like Alberta is in a position at least where things are not as bad as they could be, which is not a celebratory statement, but at least it describes where things are at right now.
Her approach, yeah, she's taken tons of heat over it, but she's continued to insist that this is the best path. And even Mark Carney gave her a shout out today, Sabrina, for her planned trade mission to Asia. What do you think? Does she deserve some credit on this file?
Well, I think it's interesting to see some of the other elements around how Danielle Smith responded yesterday, right? I found it interesting to see that James Moore, you know, a prominent conservative, took to Twitter to say that she was being a little bit too celebratory, and that this was still a bad deal for Canada. And then you saw a very similar response from Jason Kenney. So it's interesting to see what they might be angling for. But it's interesting, you know, at the end of the day, like, is Danielle Smith Team Canada? I think she's had some approaches in the United States that most other Canadians and other premiers haven't necessarily agreed with. And then yesterday we saw her come out and say she also wanted to chat a little bit more about Quebec's sovereignty and how that might take place in Canada or in Alberta. And so again, you see Danielle Smith doing maybe like half a step towards Team Canada and then reeling it way back to Team Alberta. And I don't think that she has stuck out her neck, you know, in a way that actually shows that she's in it for Canada. I think she sounds like she's very much in it for herself. And I think that that's actually a problem for Pierre Poilievre, who's going to have to deal with some of these comments and what they mean for other Canadians and what it means for national unity.
Well, to be fair, I mean, in that clip we just played, Smith seemed to take comfort in the fact that she's hopeful that the fact that we didn't see this big increase yesterday that many were bracing for means that we're going to see a renegotiation of the new NAFTA into a new NAFTA. So that's all about Canada. And she was more than once in that address before the chamber today taking questions, was talking about Canada. Zane, I do wonder, though, given that the guy who insisted on that new NAFTA just tore it all up, is it naive to park your hopes at the feet of a new negotiated trade deal with the U.S.?
Very much so, unless there is, you know, an actual negotiation in good faith with a stable government, which Danielle Smith has been asking for. Let's have an election and result in a stable sort of government with a mandate, and that mandate very well could go to Mark Carney and the Liberals. But yeah, unless we're in that process and it's kind of moving along and it's signed, any sort of rhetoric I would not necessarily trust. Listen, I think she was overly celebratory yesterday. As she walked that back today, fine. I'm not going to penalize her for it. I get what what she was trying to suggest there. But at the end of the day, Danielle Smith is in this really interesting position because you can read this one of two ways. She's either really bad at helping Pierre Poilievre, or she doesn't want Pierre Poilievre in office because she wants a Liberal government in place that she can continue punching Ottawa with. The bulk of her strategy, from a pure objective basis, I should try to say, is hitting on Ottawa on a basis that's quite regular. And that will go away should Pierre Poilievre win. And so it's not otherworldly for me to suggest that one of Danielle Smith's motives, one that she would never say out loud, is to continue having a punching bag in Ottawa available to her in the form of a Liberal government.
Okay, I need to give Amber the final word on that before we go. Go ahead, Amber. Smith-splain it to us.
That's complete nonsense. I mean, Alberta needs to have some autonomy because the federal Liberals have dropped the ball on so many big files, on immigration, on the environment, on so many big things that, frankly, Danielle Smith is stepping up to deal with that. And so just talking about having that autonomy is, I think, what Albertans expect when they've seen such devastation. I think it's completely bogus to suggest that Danielle Smith would want to have a Liberal government. There are other forces in the world that we need to unite against. It's not something that would serve the Albertan people, and she was elected on a mandate to get the best results for Albertans. So I think that that's a way simplistic way to look at it, and completely overblown.
It was a good one, Amber. Welcome to the team. Thanks to you three.